Good evening, everyone. Uh, my name is John Blasco. I serve as Deputy Chief of Staff and District Director for Congress member Dan Goldman for New York 10's Congressional District. I just want to thank you all for coming out to our virtual town hall tonight to discuss the Israel-Hamas war. The last few months, as we all know, have been a highly emotional time for all of us, but particularly for our Jewish and Palestinian brothers, sisters, and siblings. We hope that through this community town hall, that you can share your questions and thoughts directly with Representative Goldman, so he can continue to take those thoughts back to Washington, D.C. in order to serve the district. Before we get started with the formal program tonight, I'd just like to announce some important logistical information because we have many constituents that are on this virtual Zoom tonight. We ask a couple of things. One, when you are called on to ask your question or to give your comments, please keep your question and comments under 90 seconds. For anyone who runs over that time, I will ask you to kindly wrap up your question and your thoughts. If you do not, I will mute you and I will ask the congressman to respond. Our goal is to ensure that we have as many constituents as possible to have an opportunity to speak. And we can only do that if each of us adhere to this time limit. This has also, as I said earlier, been a trying time for all of us, and I know emotions are high, but I ask that you enter this space with respect and with intention to create a space that is inclusive for everyone. For anyone that does violate that space agreement, I will kindly remind you of this space agreement, and if that behavior continues, you will be muted. Please reference to your own experience words, phrases, or actions that exhibit anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, sexism, racism, or any form of oppression will not be tolerated in this town hall and will result in your removal from this town hall. Please do use the raise hand feature to ask your questions or make your comments. You will not be called on without a raised hand. When I call your name, you will be promoted to a panelist and you will be unmuted so that you can ask your question to the congressman. If we do not get to your question, you can always visit our website at goldman.house.gov in order to submit a comment or a question, or you are also welcome to call any one of our offices. I want to thank you all again for joining. And now I'm going to turn it over to Representative Dan Goldman for remarks.
Thank you very much, John, and thank everybody for joining us today. I wanted to have this town hall tonight because I want this whole district to know that I care about how you feel and what you think. I want to hear directly from you, and I will always be the kind of representative who creates space for all of my constituents to be heard, even if we may sometimes disagree. I know that my perspective on what's going on in the Middle East is not one that is shared by every single one of my constituents, and I'm sure many on this call have strong feelings that may not align with my own. You can be sure that my team has relayed all the messages that we have received and that I have reviewed all of the materials that everyone has submitted. There is nothing that I take more seriously than your input on how I can best represent the people of the 10th District. I am here principally to listen to you and to hear your views, and I really hope we can keep this respectful. Before we get started with questions, I just want to make a couple of preliminary remarks. The past 2 months have been incredibly difficult for all of us. I know that there are many in the district who have family members, either in Israel or Gaza, including myself, who have been directly impacted by the violence. And that is a reality that I carry with me every single day, and one that motivates me to do everything in my power to find a path to peace for Israelis and Palestinians alike. Like many of you, my views are impacted by my personal experience. My grandmother escaped pogroms in Russia to come through Ellis Island to settle in this country. For those who may not know, a pogrom is a systematic and wholesale murder of a particular ethnic group, in this case, Jews, that has occurred to Jews throughout history. I was also in Israel on October 7th with my wife and three youngest children, 9, 6, and 5. We had dozens of rockets that were shot by Hamas towards us, but thankfully were saved by the Iron Dome, which is a purely defensive missile system. And as a Jew growing up in this country, I grew up with the knowledge that throughout history, Jews have been persecuted, discriminated against, and ethnically cleansed from many countries. And it is largely that shared history of persecution and discrimination that led me to commit my career to public service and fight for equal rights. It's why I wrote my college senior thesis on the Jewish involvement in the civil rights movement. And it's why Jack Greenberg, who helped to found the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, was my idol and prompted me to go to law school. Although we may disagree on how to ultimately get there, I sincerely believe that those values of our district and our ultimate objectives are truly aligned. First, I believe that we all agree that violence and war is horrible, that terrorism is awful, and that the death of innocent civilians is not okay. It was not okay on October 7th, and it is not okay in Gaza. It is absolutely heartbreaking for me, especially as a father of 5, to see the ongoing casualties in Gaza. And I have been a very strong proponent from the get-go for additional humanitarian aid to flow into Gaza. Second, I believe many of us, if not all of us, want safety and security for Israel, the only Jewish state in the world created in the aftermath of the Holocaust, which was the worst genocide in the history of this world. And we also want self-determination for the Palestinian people, who also deserve a state of their own. And everything I've done in Congress related to this horrible war has been based on that framework. And I believe, and I do hope you as well, that the only path to achieve that framework is a two-state solution. And I will not abandon that principle and that framework. In order for that to happen, it is my strong belief that Hamas cannot remain in power in Gaza, which they have controlled for the past 15 years after Israel withdrew in 2005. As we saw on October 7th, Hamas is a brutal and violent terrorist group whose stated objective is to kill Jews and eliminate Israel. And since October 7th, Hamas has reiterated that it will try again and again to repeat the massacre of October 7th. Hamas continues to hold 137 Israeli hostages, the vast majority innocent civilians, in what we now know to be horrific conditions. Approximately 20 at least have died in Hamas captivity, and there are reports of ongoing sexual violence against Israelis in Gaza, similar to what we now know happened on October 7th. We simply cannot accept the existence of terrorist organizations in the Middle East or anywhere. Hamas is also a danger to our own national security. Our safety and security is intertwined with Israel's, which is the lone democracy in that region. Hamas, Hezbollah, other Iranian-supported terrorist groups not only want to eradicate Israel, but they want to take down the United States and democracy writ large. But Hamas is not only bad for Israel's security and potentially our own national security. It is my sincere belief that Hamas has been terrible for the Palestinian people in Gaza. Instead of investing money and resources in building schools, infrastructure, and a successful economy, Hamas diverted much of the money that it received from other countries to their terror network of tunnels, weapons, and command centers. And the fact that Hamas uses civilians as human shields is just another reflection of how bad they are for the Palestinian people. But Israel must rise above a terrorist group and do everything that it can to protect civilian lives. And I have relayed that message to the Biden administration and to the Israeli government. Israel must also do much more to allow for humanitarian aid to flow into Gaza so that the more than 1 million Palestinians who have been displaced can get the necessary resources that they deserve. I've also discussed this with the administration. I know they're pushing very hard on this, and I was one of the first first members of Congress to call for a humanitarian pause to allow for humanitarian aid to get into Gaza. It's not only the right thing to do, but it is also the strategic thing to do, to lay the proper foundation for a lasting, peaceful two-state solution down the road. I want this war to end, and I want a permanent ceasefire after Hamas releases all of the innocent hostages and surrenders. And I hope that happens very soon so we can stop the violence and begin to rebuild Gaza. I also just want to take a quick moment to address a vote that I took that many of you have expressed opposition to, the vote to censure my colleague, Rashida Tlaib. I have received and I've read the open letter relating to that vote. Let me first say that this was the toughest vote that I have taken in my first year in Congress. I did not want this resolution to come to the floor, which is why I voted to procedurally postpone the vote indefinitely. But let me give you a little bit of context here. First, this resolution was not introduced by Marjorie Taylor Greene. With that resolution, I voted against. Second, I have developed a very good relationship with Rashida Tlaib through our work together on many issues that affect families around the country, including gun violence, paid family leave, universal child care, and the child tax credit. As you know, Rashida released a video accusing President Biden of committing genocide and, worse yet, using the phrase "from the river to the sea." This phrase, as it is frequently used by Hamas and understood by every Jew in the world, is a horrific anti-Semitic slogan that means that Israel does not have a right to exist and should be eliminated, and that every Jew within Israel should be killed. It means from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, which is what Israel's borders are. Now, in response to a firestorm related to that video, Rashida clarified on Twitter that she meant the phrase as an aspirational call for freedom for Palestinians. Soon after the video was released, I got wind that there would be another censure motion, a resolution that would be put on the floor the following week. And I wanted very much to avoid that from happening. So I reached out directly to Rashida. I did not ask her to apologize or to retract her statement. I just simply asked her to clarify that even though she may not have intended the expression "from the river to the sea" to mean what it is commonly understood to mean, that she at least understands that many consider it to be a call for the elimination of Israel and the Jews within it, and that she did not mean to offend anyone or use it in that way. She refused to do so. And if she had, I would have voted no. I do not believe members of Congress should use our significant platforms to promote hate of any kind: racism, sexism, discrimination against the LGBT community, or anti-Semitism and other religious discrimination. Everyone has the right to say what they want, but I cannot condone any member of Congress that promotes hate speech that is used to incite violence around the world. And just like it was unacceptable that Islamophobia spiked after 9/11, it is also unacceptable that anti-Semitism has surged after October 7th, and we must all speak out against it. And this is exactly the same framework that I will use in any similar situation that comes before me. In fact, I already have. After a Republican introduced a bill to expel all Palestinians from the United States, I introduced a resolution condemning that bill and that rhetoric as un-American. And I will continue to do that whenever I see hate, xenophobia, or religious discrimination. All right, I've taken a while. I really want to hear from you all and get your questions. So thank you for joining, and I look forward to a nice conversation.
Thank you, Representative Goldman. So we will start with the Q&A, and I will follow the raised hands that I see. Just a reminder, please keep your comments under 90 seconds. You will be promoted to a panelist when I call on you. That means there will be a few second delay when you are promoted. So please just give it a minute so that you can be promoted. I will let each speaker know when they have 30 seconds left in their 90-second timer. I also do apologize if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Please correct me as soon as you come on. So first, we will hear from Fatima Shalash, and we will work to promote you.
Hi, yes, my name is Fatima. I wasn't sure if video was going to be allowed. It's not allowing the video to pop up.
Let us check that, but if just in the honor of time, if you could just get started with your question or comments, that would be great.
Okay, great. Hello. My name is Fatima Shalash. I live in Windsor Terrace. I'm a mother, and I'm a proud Palestinian. Today marks 67 days of feeling dehumanized as your Palestinian constituent. I have called your office every single day, pouring my heart out to you. And I am no longer here to convince you of my humanity. It is time for you, Dan Goldman, to convince us of yours. Former head of Israeli national security stated that Gaza will become a place where no human being can exist. A Google search pulls up more quotes of officials revealing the true motive of this atrocity. Yet, you stand unwavering in your support for what is clearly a state-sanctioned ethnic cleansing, never once mentioning the high death toll in Gaza or taking explicit actions to protect innocent lives. The average of those killed in Gaza is 5 years old. Parents write their children's names on their legs to help identify them. Should they be bombed to pieces?
Fatima, I'm sorry, there's 30 seconds left.
I will never accept your alliance with this genocide that directly kills my own people, including 2 of my cousins in the West Bank, where there is no Hamas. I cannot accept using Hamas as a scapegoat for its campaign for ethnic cleansing. Recently, you stated a resolute focus on ending the violence and displacement of civilians in Gaza. Can you show us your humanity? Can you tell us exactly how you plan to follow through on this resolute focus? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Fatima.
Thank you for joining, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. I'm terribly sorry to hear about your relatives in the West Bank. I have been very vocal. I co-sponsored a letter with Senator Booker calling on the Biden administration to do everything possible that it can to stop any violence in the West Bank. The settler violence is unacceptable. And I've been very clear about that. And I was very happy to see today that President Biden said that he would be withholding M16 rifles until he could get assurance that it would not go into the West Bank. I agree with you. That is not where this war is. That is not where Hamas is. And that is not acceptable behavior from Israel. I appreciate you very much your perspective. I do disagree with you about whether or not this is ethnic cleansing or genocide. I don't believe Israel is intentionally trying to kill Palestinians. I believe Israel is trying to eliminate Hamas. And I think that ultimately will be beneficial, even though right now it is incredibly difficult to deal with. I'm very optimistic that we will soon be able to figure out a future solution where the Palestinian civilians can not only live with dignity, but live with prosperity and security. And that has not been able to happen with Hamas at the helm. And so that is part of the reason why I am so adamant that we need to do everything to get rid of Hamas. And I think the quickest way to resolve this is to return the hostages and for Hamas to lay down their arms.
Thank you, Fatima. I'd like to call on the next, let's see, and we got the video working, so I apologize for that technical issue. Next, we're gonna call Rabbi Ginsburg. Just give a second to be promoted. And just as a reminder to all, 90 seconds, and I will let you know when you have 30 seconds left. Rabbi Ginsburg.
Good evening, Congressman Goldman. I really appreciate your strong support. I do feel horrible what Fatima just said about loss of relatives, but I think very few people have the right to judge unless they were there. You were there at the first day of the war broke out. You had to run to bunkers. You experienced firsthand the surprised, unprovoked attack that caused the death of, they found now to be 1,200 babies, children lying in their beds around the holiday meal, totally taken by surprise. You were there. You experienced the fear. You experienced the fright. You experienced the running to the bunkers. And for that, I think you have a firsthand, on-ground feeling and knowledge of what's going on, more than I, who have not been there recently, and anybody else here. Now, while Fatima lost relatives, and I can't begin
Rabbi,
to
I'm sorry, you have
express,
30
I
seconds left.
can't begin to express how sorry I am for that. But I do understand your position as you experienced it firsthand, and for that, I thank you for your strong support. And hopefully you continue support to try to bring peace, and everyone should get along and live together in peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. And there's no question that being there has definitely had an impact on me and given me a sense of what Israelis feel right now, even though I can't quite imagine what those in the South feel. But I will say I disagree with you that you have to have been there to have an opinion about what is going on or to have a perspective. I think what is important is that everybody do their very best to make sure they understand accurate facts and make sure that they have accurate information to inform opinions. But it's very important and it's central to our democracy that people be able to have those opinions and share those opinions. And that's why I'm happy to be here to listen to them.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Rabbi Ginsburg. Next, we will call on Lynn Vogelstein. Apologies if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Please correct me. Lynn, give a second to be promoted. Thank you, Lynn. We will unmute you. Second. Hold on 1 second. You're not unmuted. Are you getting a feature that says we're asking you to unmute?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Goldman. My name is Lynn Vogelstein. I'm your constituent. I voted for you. And I implore you tonight to support an immediate permanent ceasefire to save civilian lives and ensure essential services enter Gaza. Thank you so much for sharing your family history and personal experiences. My father was born in Hamburg, Germany in 1925. He was bar mitzvahed weeks before Kristallnacht when his father was arrested by the Nazis. My father was sent to hide on a family member's farm until he could come here in 1939. Many members of both sides of my family were left behind and died in concentration camps. Their collective trauma lives inside everyone in my family. As your Jewish constituent, I implore you to ensure that such death and trauma is never again inflicted on anyone. I wish someone in this country had fought for my family's safety then. And I ask you, as a Jew, to uphold the Jewish belief in the sanctity of all human life and fight for Palestinian lives and safety today.
Lynn, there's 30 seconds left.
17,000 Palestinians are dead. More than 7,000 children are dead and 25,000 orphaned. And my question for you tonight is, exactly how many Palestinian deaths are you willing to accept to eradicate Hamas? How many Palestinian children, a number, please, must die before you call to an end for the killing?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lynn, and I appreciate your perspective. It is important, and as I said at the beginning, that common belief in equal rights based on the persecution and discrimination against Jews is what has led me into this path and this career. I would love for there to be a ceasefire. I do not believe that a permanent ceasefire is possible without the hostages being returned and without Hamas no longer being in power. There was a ceasefire on October 6th that Hamas brutally violated by mutilating and killing 1,200 Israelis out of nowhere with no provocation that caused that. And that is what has started this war. I hope it ends as soon as possible. It pains me so much to see the lives that are lost in Gaza, but I don't see a path forward to a permanent ceasefire without returning the hostages and Hamas laying down their arms.
Would you support any type of
Lynn, I'm
ceasefire?
sorry.
Because you
We
haven't
just have-
so far. Well,
I'm so sorry.
I'm just following up on the congressman's
Yeah,
focus
I know,
on a
but I
permanent
want-
ceasefire. So I just want to know,
Yeah,
would you
no,
support,
that's
and so will you sign Representative Bush's resolution?
no, I will not sign that resolution because that does not call for the release of the hostages, and it would allow Hamas to remain in power. And Hamas has said that it will continue to attack Jews and to attack Israel as much as it possibly can. I did support the temporary ceasefire that existed for 7 days so that hostages could be released and so that humanitarian aid could be sent into Gaza. And I was disappointed that Hamas breached that agreement by refusing to turn over 17 female hostages who were not turned over according to our administration because Hamas feared what they would say about their time in captivity, including sexual violence. So the conditions of these hostages are horrific right now. And I think it is unwise to call for any permanent ceasefire before the hostages are returned.
Well, Representative, the only hostages
Lynn, I'm
who
sorry.
were released during the ceasefire.
Lynn, I'm so
brief
sorry.
ceasefire.
So
So
just
will
I
you
just want to
support-
be really respectful, okay? We did allow a follow-up question. I have a lot of people with their raised hands. If you can raise your hand again, but I just want to allow other people to ask questions. So thank you so much. Please feel free to raise your hand again. Next, we're going to call on Dave Robinson. Please give a second for you to be promoted. And just a reminder to all, we're trying to get through, I would like to get through as many questions as possible. I understand people might have follow-ups. Please feel free to raise your hand again. Please feel free to contact our office, submit a comment, as many people have done already. So Dave, I will pass it over to you and I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left. Thank you. Hold on, Dave. You're not. There you go.
Sorry about that. Hello, Representative Goldman. I'm Dave Robinson, a longtime resident and homeowner in Carroll Gardens, Brooklyn. I've been there for over 30 years. I'm 63 years old, and I'm as Jewish as you are. My question to you, how can you possibly expect anyone to believe that the destruction of Gaza and the killing of thousands of innocent people, including thousands of children, will make anyone safer. It's obvious that Israel's ongoing war crimes of collective punishment in Gaza will only inflame hatred against Israel, against America, and against Jews everywhere around the world for generations. You know this will only lead to blowback and then more violence in response, all in the name of self-defense. Until Israel takes the obvious first step of enacting an immediate and permanent ceasefire against all Palestinians, nothing positive can happen.
30 seconds left, Dave.
Thank you. We should not have to beg you to support this. I pray you come to your senses and join us in demanding ceasefire now. Thank you for answering my question. I'm happy to repeat it if necessary.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate your perspective. Appreciate very much where you're coming from. And as I have mentioned several times, it is heartbreaking to see the deaths of innocent civilians and especially children. I've mostly answered your question. I would previously, and I do want to hear from as many people as possible. I would just add that my focus right now is on not only a long-term permanent ceasefire, but a possibility for a peaceful two-state solution. And Hamas has demonstrated that they are not a partner in a possible any peaceful scenario, whether it's a two-state solution or not. Hamas has neglected the Palestinian civilians for 15 years, and they are unfit to either be a government or certainly to be a neighbor for Israel. So I do agree with you that I am invested very much in the future safety and security and prosperity of the Palestinian people. But I just disagree with you that it would be possible to do so if Hamas remains in power.
But you think
Dave, I'm sorry. We do not have time for follow-up questions. We have a lot of people who have questions. Next, we're going to move on to Lisa Arbisser. Reminder, you'll be promoted. Reminder, 90 seconds. I will remind you of 30 seconds. We need to allow space for all of our neighbors to ask questions. Please keep your question to one question only. Thank you for that time. And next we have Lisa coming up.
Hi, Congressman Goldman. Thank you so much for having this town hall and allowing so much of our neighbors and our really diverse communities come in and speak. I'm a resident of the Lower East Side, and I am Jewish. And I feel very deeply the pain that has been expressed so far, and that everyone is really experiencing that's connected to Israel and Palestine. It's such a long history of mistrust and hatred and violence and war and pain, and it's hard to watch it continue, especially in Gaza as well as in Israel. I'm glad and grateful that you are supportive of a long-term two-state solution, because I think ultimately peace is the only answer, and continuing violence is horrible, and more people just die. I also want to express gratitude for your support of returning the hostages and never letting that issue go unheard, because there are still, as you said, 134, I believe, hostages still in Gaza.
30 seconds left.
So I guess what I want to raise, and I haven't heard a lot of people speak about it, is wondering what your position is, and if there is any support that you can offer for the protest movement in Israel, which has also sort of brought in the hostage community, relatives and victims as well, who are really advocating for hostages, because the Netanyahu government is really focusing on eliminating Hamas and has really not been focusing on returning the hostages. And
Thank
Netanyahu
you, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate your perspective. We are bringing as much attention to the hostages as we can, and President Biden is incredibly focused on it. I do believe that the Israeli government is is also very focused on it. I am quite concerned about the Israeli government, and I think it is important to separate the Israeli government from the country of Israel and the Israeli people. The protests that you were talking about were peaceful protests by hundreds of thousands of Israelis objecting to an anti-democratic judicial overhaul that Prime Minister Netanyahu and his far-right government were trying to push through prior to the war beginning. And I think that I disagree with just about everything that Netanyahu stands for, and I think he needs to go. The question is whether and how can he be removed during a war, which is a very complicated situation. But I'm disappointed with him in just about every respect, and so I do hope that there is a path forward very soon that does not include him as prime minister.
Thank you, Lisa. Next, we're going to hear from Stephen Botticelli. Stephen, give a second to be promoted, and then you're going to unmute. Reminder to everyone, we're asking to keep your comments to 90 seconds. I will let you know when there are 30 seconds left. And next, we'll have Stephen ask comments.
Hi, can you see and hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I'm Steve. I live in the West Village. I was going to tell you about my friend Maram, who is a 25-year-old Afro-Palestinian woman who I've been meeting with over several years. She's part of a writers group of young Gazan writers called We Are Not Numbers. I'll make it short about her because there's something I'd like to follow up with you about, Representative Goldman. Basically, though, she's had to relocate several times. Her home was destroyed. She was injured by flying glass from an explosion. And we've been able to have intermittent contact during the bombardment. And her last message to me was, I don't know, Steve, I guess I will die in this war. And now I've not heard from her for 2.5 weeks since the end of the ceasefire. But Representative Goldman, you said something a minute ago about separating the Israeli government from the Israeli people. I ask you to think about how that pertains to ordinary Gazans and the act of collective punishment that is right now being inflicted on them in the tens of thousands.
30 seconds left, Steve.
That they are in no way responsible for. And I guess a question here might be, you spoke approvingly of Biden's restricting the M16s to the people in the West Bank. Would you be willing to call for an end to military aid to Israel to court in light of what they're doing with the weapons we're giving them?
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. And it's heartbreaking. I'm very sorry to hear about Maran. First, I will say I disagree that there is collective punishment. I don't think I understand the definition of it. I do think we have to keep in context, and I mentioned this in my opening remarks, that Hamas's MO is to use the civilians in Gaza as human shields. They put their military installations and operations and weapons within schools, within hospitals, within civilian neighborhoods, with the idea of being willing to sacrifice innocent civilians for the public relations response that would get. Again, as I said, that does not absolve Israel from taking extra measures to be careful, and I've certainly been strongly advocating that. But no, I think because Israel is a very strong and long-term ally, our only democratic ally in that region, and was savagely attacked by a terrorist group funded by the regime in Iran, that we must support Israel and its right to defend itself, which I think everyone should agree that exists. And that I certainly hope this ends as quickly as possible. And the collateral deaths are awful and sadly a cost of war. And so I do hope that Hamas will return the hostages and surrender so that we can end this violence.
Thank you, Congressmember. We're going to move on to Melissa Schiffman. Melissa, you'll be promoted. Reminder, 90 seconds. I will let you know when there are 30 seconds left. And just make sure you unmute.
Okay. Hi, Congressman. My name is Melissa Schiffman. I live on the Lower East Side, and I just want to say how much I appreciate your positions, and I just want to also thank the members of your staff, because being a healthcare advocate, I know they're the ones who answer the phone all the time, and they're getting the brunt of people's ire, and that's not an easy position for them to be in. So I calling to mind the testimony that you made about a month ago about being a Jew in America. And I just wanted to talk about my experience as well. Like I'm the grandchild of Holocaust survivors, actually the daughter of a Holocaust survivor. My mom was born just after liberation on a train leaving a DP camp. My grandmother was one of 8. My grandfather was one of 4, and they're the sole survivors of their family. So I just want to say that the generational trauma is real. And, my cousins and I have all grown up with a very small family, and with that anxiety that comes with unspoken trauma. My
30
children,
seconds left.
thank you. I have 2 children. One is in college, and one is at that age of looking at colleges. And, obviously never thought that I would have to look through this lens now of where my son should go to college. And but aside from that, I just want to say that it feels like the United Nations has a bias against Israel. The silence around the rape atrocities toward women is so alarming to me. And news that members of UNRWA have actually had hostages. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa. Thanks for telling your story. I think it's important that we all share our personal stories, and it's informs much of where we come from, but it's also important to hear the other side. I am alarmed that many of the advocacy groups who were so involved in the Me Too movement and speaking out against gender violence have been all but silent in the face of overwhelming evidence put out there by Hamas itself of awful sexual violence on October 7th. And we now are getting reports of additional sexual violence that is going on. It dovetails a little bit with, some of my deflation, I will say, at feeling as a Jew who has always been involved and committed to equal rights and civil rights, and that many, many Jews have been throughout the centuries, that in Jewish time of need, it feels very much like the people we thought were our allies in this fight are no longer with us. And I think that's a little bit of what you're discussing, and I certainly empathize with that feeling as well.
Thank you, Melissa. Next, we will hear from Queen Arsem. Queen, you will be promoted to a panelist. Just remember to unmute yourself. You will have 90 seconds, and I will let you know when there are 30 seconds left for your question and your comments.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, 1 second to get the video on. Okay, great. So good evening. My name is Queen Arsem O'Malley. I'm a constituent in the district, and by day I fight for the rights of healthcare workers in New York, and so honor the memory of the more than 280 healthcare workers who have been killed in Gaza so far. I'm a lawyer, and I know that laws are only as good as their enforcement. The United Nations and other independent organizations have recognized in the past that Israel has consistently violated international law with their illegal settlements, and there is clear evidence that Israel's instructions to Gazans to leave their homes in Gaza City, denying Gazans food, water, and electricity, mass arresting unarmed civilians, and other actions may constitute collective punishment. That is the opinion of people who are experts in humanitarian law, not just you. And additionally, Israel has used white phosphorus in densely populated civilian areas in both Gaza and in Lebanon. The Biden administration has even said that it is concerned about Israel's use of US supplied white phosphorus munitions in these ways. And that's coming from an administration that is hesitant to criticize Israel on literally anything. You claim to be concerned about hostages who are themselves in danger from these attacks and from these actions. Given Israel's history with ignoring the boundaries of international law and the new
30
evidence
seconds left.
daily about its crimes in Palestine, will you, I know that you previously said that you will not call for an end to US military aid. Will you, at the very least, call for US military aid and weaponry to be conditioned on Israel complying with international humanitarian law in Gaza?
Thank you, Queen.
Thank you, Queen. I appreciate your perspective on that. Israel aid from the U.S. is already conditioned on adherence to international law as well as other conditions. And from what I have observed and read, Israel is not engaging in collective punishment and is abiding to the extent that we can figure out by the laws of war, by targeting Hamas, by warning civilians. I don't think it is enough to simply abide by the laws of war, however. I think that Israel needs to be much more thoughtful from a moral and a strategic standpoint. And that is why I have urged Israel to do more to protect civilians in Gaza. And that's why the Biden administration has urged Israel to do more. And that's why we've also strongly pushed for more humanitarian aid to get in there. And I think it's imperative that that happen and that happen as soon as possible.
Thank you, Queen. Next, we will hear from Megan Robinson. Megan, you will be promoted to a panelist. Just a reminder, you will have 90 seconds. I will let you know when there are 30 seconds left. And reminder to unmute yourself when you appear on the screen. Just hit unmute. There you go.
Hi, can you hear? Okay, great. Good evening. Thank you for hosting this town hall, Congressman. We appreciate you listening to your constituents. My name is Megan Robinson. I am a constituent. I live in Prospect Heights, Brooklyn, where I live with my husband, who's Arab American and Muslim, and our two children. And I've really been stunned and so disturbed by what seems to be your inability to speak to, let alone take any action to stop the immense suffering and loss of innocent lives in Gaza. We should be actively protecting Israeli lives and also actively preventing the loss of innocent Palestinian lives. I've seen with my husband how Arab men are regularly smeared and given a terrorist label and presumed guilty, and your unwillingness to humanize Palestinians is deeply troubling. It condones the slaughter and displacement of civilians in Gaza. It emboldens brazen settlers in the West Bank, and it contributes to the rise of Islamophobia here and around the world.
30 seconds left.
You've referred to your wife as your best advisor. She has supported extremist tweets, including one saying that rape is rooted not only in Hamas, it is in every level of Arab society, and others suggesting there's no such thing as an innocent Palestinian. Do you agree with these statements? And do you have a blind spot when it comes to Israeli policy that prevents you from viewing Israeli and Palestinian lives as equally valuable?
Thank you, Megan, for your question. First, I want to address the rise of Islamophobia and Islamophobia in general. I very early on spoke out and condemned in serious and critical terms the horrific death and murder of Wadia in Illinois, a Palestinian American 6-year-old boy who was killed in a hate crime, completely unacceptable. I've spoken out publicly about the 3 Palestinian students who were shot at the University of Vermont as completely unacceptable. I've introduced a resolution condemning Republicans for introducing a bill to expel Palestinians from this country. And I've also signed on to a letter urging the Biden administration to give temporary protected status to any Palestinians who can come here to get away from the atrocities that are going on in Gaza. So I am very sensitive and aware of the heartbreak and the rise in Islamophobia. And I find it unacceptable, and I have spoken out and taken action against it. As for that tweet you mentioned, you know, I of course do not believe that all Arabs are rapists, nor does my wife. I did ask her about that tweet, and what she was focused on in relation to that tweet is the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war, which we now know to be the case. And I think we can all condemn the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war, which was the point of her response to that tweet.
Thank you, Megan. Next, we will hear from Shirley Kwok. Apologies if I pronounce anyone's name incorrectly. Shirley, you will be promoted to be a panelist, and you will be asked to unmute yourself. As a reminder, you will have 90 seconds, and I will let you know when there are 30 seconds left.
Hello, Congressman. Thank you so much for your time. I live actually right by your 9th Street office here in Park Slope. I want to introduce myself as a local mom of 2 young children, as well as marrying into a family that has Holocaust survivors. And I wanted to thank you for your work on behalf of children and families on both sides. And I'm posing a question of, your work is aiming for the longer picture, safety and peace of families and children on both sides. What can we do as your everyday constituents to support just the safety of our Israeli, you know, just fellow humans, as well as our fellow humans in over in Gaza?
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you for that question. Look, I think the biggest thing that we need to do right now is take the temperature down here at home. We were just talking about the rise in Islamophobia. The rise of anti-Semitism is off the charts, and we are seeing increasingly hostile protests and a lot of anger, and it's caused, I think, a lot of people from all backgrounds to be afraid. That is not okay. Americans are not responsible for whatever is going on in the Middle East and whatever your views are, and we should not be taking out any of our emotions or our upset about what's going on overseas against each other. And I think that is something that we all need to work on, and we all need to remember that we need to see the humanity in each other. We need to engage. We need to have conversations at a reasonable level, at a respectful level, and that is one place we can start.
Thank you, Shirley. Next, we will hear from Sheila Scharfman. Sheila, you will be promoted as a panelist, and you will be asked to unmute yourself. Just as a reminder, you will have 90 seconds, and I will let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Congressman. I just want to thank you for your positions and the statements you've made. I am very much aligned with your thinking. I am a Brooklyn resident, a lifelong Brooklyn resident. I have family who were survivors of the Holocaust, as well as now I have family and friends who are survivors of October 7th, and some who are not. This is a deeply painful time. It is especially painful to me because my family, I have civil rights lawyers in my family. I am also a lawyer. And it's a very long history in this country with the Jewish community serving as civil rights defenders. And when there was a proposed ban on Muslims coming into this country, we were very much aligned with protecting people who would be discriminated against. And it's extremely painful for us to see now that we are being turned on at this moment when we are in deep need and deep pain. Tragically, my heart breaks for everyone who's talking about losses and fears they have and the suffering in Gaza. We want humanitarian aid. I do. I'm speaking for myself. I want humanitarian aid into Gaza. I want people to be protected. But you cannot have peace with someone who is looking for your destruction. When you have
30 seconds left.
No problem. When you have a deadly neighbor next door to you, we are in a terrible quandary. And I hope we have peace. And I thank you for your upright standing on all of this, because this is very, very, very awful for all of us. The rise in anti-Semitism and hate in the UN and in other places, it's very painful to us. And we were much, much closer to greater expanded peace in the Middle East. And there were some bad actors who don't want to see peace, and they are disruptors of this. I hope the Arab community around there might help in getting a greater sustained peace and a two-state solution, and move us towards that, which we would all like to see happen
Sheila.
if possible.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments, Sheila.
Okay, now we are going to just have time for one more question. Just see. We have Brett Letner. Apologies if I pronounce your last name incorrectly. You will be promoted as panelist. You will have 90 seconds to speak, and I will let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
Yes, hi there, Congressman Goldman. Thank you for the time. I'll keep it brief because I know we're short on time. I just want to thank you for your moral clarity on this issue. I think that it's been, very clear from the start that, you're a humanitarian and that you lament the loss of life on both sides. And I wholeheartedly agree that the quickest way to end this terrible situation for all is to have Hamas, a terrorist organization recognized around the world as such, lay down their arms, and then, of course, have the hostages freed. To that last point about the hostages, I'm curious to know what pressure you and the Biden administration could place on international organizations like the Red Cross and other international actors or mediators to gain access to the hostages. It's clear that their conditions are horrendous, and each day is probably a living hell for them. So I'm wondering what more could be done to gain access to them, to hasten their release,
30 seconds left.
and then hopefully hasten the end of the war.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, Brett, and thank you for that question. It's especially timely since I'm in the process of finalizing a letter that I'm trying to get some colleagues to join me on to the International Committee for the Red Cross, asking them for much more detailed answers as to why they have not been able to get access to hostages in Gaza pursuant to international humanitarian law. And specifically, I'm interested in whether there have been discussions with any other countries, obviously, than the Hamas organization, and whether they have been putting any pressure, because ultimately, Hamas said again this week they will not allow it. Will not allow anyone in. What we know about these hostages is just horrific conditions, and we're on day 67 now or 68 of just terrible conditions. More than 20 have died. They're not getting daily medication that they need. One of the released hostages was suffering from such bad hypothermia that she had a fever of 82 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's unclear exactly whether she will fully make it through because she did not get just her basic daily medication. And that's certainly true for others as well. So the negotiations to return the hostages will continue. But in the meantime, I completely agree with you that the ICRC needs to get access to the remaining hostages to do wellness checks, to do medical checks, to provide medicine, and to ensure that they are being held pursuant to international law.
Thank you, Representative Goldman. Thank you, Brett. And thank you, everyone who's had an opportunity to ask a question. I know there are many hand raised. I just want to remind you, we are closing the town hall, but I want to remind you, you can always visit goldman.house.gov to send a message directly to the Congress member's office. And as always, you can call any one of our district offices or our office in Washington, D.C. So I just want to say thank you again for everyone. Thank you, Representative Goldman. Everyone be safe and get home safe if you're not home, and be well. Good night.